Olivia Bennett walked through the glass hallways of Nova Drive's Detroit headquarters like a storm in a tailored suit. Her heels echoed with precision, her face unreadable. To the outside world, she was untouchable, a 38-year-old automotive prodigy who'd turned a legacy brand into a tech juggernaut. Stockholders worshipped her, employees feared her, and her competitors? They just prayed she wouldn't notice them. That morning, every major news outlet had called it, "The future of driving is here." They were wrong. By noon, the hybrid engine, Nova Drive's billion-dollar gamble, had failed its final trial. The test rig overheated, shorted out, and nearly caught fire. 6 months of development, $80 million in R&D, and a $500 million federal contract on the line. Gone in 15 minutes. The Department of Defense engineers walked out before the smoke even cleared. In the executive war room, screens blinked with red error codes. The engineers argued over voltage loads and cooling algorithms, their voices rising. Olivia stood in silence, her arms crossed, her eyes drilling holes into the blueprint on the screen. "This isn't just a setback," said Mason, the lead systems engineer. "It's a catastrophic systems failure. The battery management is flawed at a fundamental level. You said we had redundancy protocols." Her voice was calm, sharp as glass. "We did," Mason said. But nothing," she snapped. "We're 3 days away from a public unveiling. If we don't deliver, we lose the contract." In a corner of the room, near the emergency exit, Jack Miller silently swept up coffee-stained paper towels. No one noticed him, not really. He wore gray overalls, a name badge, and the quiet patience of someone used to being invisible. But his eyes weren't those of a janitor. They flicked across the digital displays with a kind of hunger. He'd heard every word. 5 years earlier, Jack had been called a genius. Chief mechanic for Phoenix Racing, the youngest in Formula One history. His designs cut pit times in half and helped win 2 world championships. Then came the scandal. Accusations of embezzlement, rigged telemetry, sabotage. He never spoke about it. No one ever proved anything. But the court of public opinion buried him. He scrubbed floors now, changed light bulbs, woke up at 4 a.m. to clean up after men who once read his technical manuals. But engines? He still understood those better than most people understood their own hearts. The room cleared out slowly, the engineers retreating to their labs. Olivia remained alone, staring at the silent machine at the center of the test bay. Her fingers dug into her palm. She hadn't cried in 10 years. She wasn't about to start now. "You're pushing too much voltage through a cooling system designed for combustion engines." She turned. Jack stood just inside the lab entrance, mop in one hand, his voice calm, almost detached. "Excuse me?" she said. "Your hybrid system's designed like a gas engine retrofit. You're stacking power cells for torque, but you haven't rerouted the thermal diffusion properly. It overheats under compound acceleration." He walked slowly toward the engine like someone approaching a sleeping lion. "You're not failing because your tech is bad. You're failing because your assumptions are." Olivia narrowed her eyes. "You're a janitor." "I used to be a mechanic," Jack shrugged. "Now I'm just someone who reads your design patents while he mops the floor." She stared at him. His face was calm, but there was something behind his eyes, not arrogance, precision, confidence born from knowledge, not ego. "You think you can fix a $300 million hybrid engine that a team of PhDs couldn't figure out in 6 months?" she asked. "I don't think," Jack said. "I know." Mason, having returned unnoticed, scoffed. "Is this a joke?" Jack ignored him. "Give me 12 hours, full access. No interruptions. I'll fix it." The room went still. Olivia tilted her head, searching his face. Her heart pounded with stress and exhaustion. Her company was about to collapse, her empire, her name, and this man, who smelled faintly of cleaning solution and machine oil, was offering salvation. Maybe it was the pressure, maybe it was the way he hadn't blinked when he said it, or maybe it was something deeper. a longing for one crazy, irrational hope. "If you fix it," she said slowly, "I'll marry you." The words hung in the air like a live wire. Mason's jaw dropped. "What? Are you serious?" Olivia didn't blink. 12 hours. Full access. If you fail, you're fired and escorted off the premises. If you succeed," she looked Jack dead in the eye, "you'll have more than a job. You'll have me." Jack didn't smile. He just nodded once. "I'll need your engineers out of the lab," he said, "and a triple layer of system override clearance." Olivia turned to Mason. "Make it happen." "You can't be serious," he whispered. "This guy could blow up the entire grid." "Then let's hope he doesn't," she said coldly. "You had your chance." 2 hours later, the lab was empty except for Jack, the engine, and a silent security camera feed Olivia watched from her office. Her phone buzzed with missed calls from the board, the Pentagon, and 3 major news outlets. She ignored them all. On screen, Jack stripped the engine housing like a surgeon opening a chest cavity. He moved fast, but with purpose. He rewired circuits, bypassed systems, rerouted coolant lines, and rebuilt a core algorithm from scratch. Olivia leaned forward, eyes narrowing. Something about the way he worked felt familiar. Not his style, his intensity. She pulled up an old file from years ago. Jack Miller, Formula One, exiled in disgrace. Her breath caught. "What the hell are you?" By sunrise, Jack stood beside the engine. His hands were black with grease, his shirt clinging to his back. He wiped his forehead with the edge of his sleeve and typed a command into the control panel. The engine powered up, not just functioning, roaring to life with clean, perfect efficiency. The new design didn't just work, it exceeded specs. Cooling temperature stable, torque output higher than projected, no trace of overload. The lab filled with light. Up in her office, Olivia sat perfectly still. Then, slowly, she stood and walked to the elevator. She had a deal to honor. Jack Miller walked into the lab just past midnight, accompanied by the squeak of rubber soles and the weight of every eye in the room. 3 security guards flanked the glass doors. 2 engineers lingered behind a table, whispering to each other like kids daring each other to laugh at a funeral. "You sure we're going to let a janitor touch a prototype worth more than this building?" one of them muttered. The head of security, a stiff man in a black suit, handed Jack a key card and a passcode clipboard. "You've got 12 hours. If you so much as open the wrong panel, we pull you out. Understood?" Jack signed the clipboard with a steady hand, then nodded. Understood. Upstairs, Olivia Bennett sat in her office with a mug of cold coffee and a monitor wall showing 5 camera angles of the lab. She hadn't changed clothes since the day before. Her phone vibrated endlessly with notifications, texts from board members, a PR disaster report, a press leak warning about the failed engine. But her eyes were locked on Jack. What was she doing? The man was a custodian, a relic, a gamble made in a moment of desperation. She could almost hear Mason's voice echoing in her head. "You're risking your career over a mop jockey." But Jack didn't look nervous. He looked focused. At exactly 12:15 a.m., he stripped off the top half of his jumpsuit, revealing a faded black t-shirt underneath, and got to work. The lab's engine rig was state-of-the-art, cold, sterile, and buzzing with digital locks. Jack, however, approached it like something alive. He didn't go for the diagnostics or even the schematics. He went straight to the wiring harness, crouching beside it and tracing it with his fingers like a pianist finding home keys. As he worked, memories came uninvited. Flashback, Monaco, 2019. The pit crew was screaming into headsets. The car was in flames. Jack was elbow-deep in a scorched battery cell while cameras rolled live across 3 continents. He'd ignored protocol to reroute the cooling system on the fly. Saved the driver's life. Saved the win. The press hailed him as a miracle worker. Then came the audit. A misplaced $12 million, sponsorship funds rerouted. His name on the transfer orders. An anonymous tip, a forced resignation, a quiet scandal. Jack never defended himself. No one wanted the truth. They just wanted a fall guy. Back to present, 1:45 a.m. Jack had the engine casing removed. He bypassed the faulty heat dump system, built a parallel coolant loop from spare parts, and replaced 2 microcontrollers with custom firmware he wrote from memory on a terminal interface that hadn't been used in years. Upstairs, Olivia sat forward. No notes, no hesitation. His hands moved like they were playing a song no one else could hear. She Googled his name again. The old headlines returned like ghosts. F1 genius or fraud. The fall of Jack Miller. Phoenix Racing Tech chief accused of embezzlement. $12 million gone. One man to blame. She scrolled deeper. A quiet court case. Dismissed without explanation. No conviction. No follow-up. Buried and forgotten. She leaned back in her chair, staring at the man on the screen. What if he's not a fraud? What if he's the smartest person in this building? 4:03 a.m. Jack calibrated the torque system, cross-checked energy outputs against the flawed original model, and smiled for the first time. It wasn't arrogance. It was relief. "Let's see if you can sing," he whispered. He hit the ignition. The engine came to life with a low, resonant hum, steady, stable, and powerful. He ran diagnostics, torque output, thermal load, battery cycling efficiency. Each reading surpassed the original benchmarks. He turned to the security guard by the door. "Tell Miss Bennett it's ready." By the time Olivia entered the lab, Jack had cleaned up the work area and wiped his hands. He looked tired but centered, like someone who'd wrestled a demon and won. "Is it running?" she asked. Jack didn't answer. He tapped a command on the console. The engine shifted from idle to a low acceleration cycle. Clean, no overheating, no warnings. "Your engineers were using a parallel control system designed for peak power, but they never accounted for thermal harmonics across redundant channels," he said quietly. "I built a simpler bridge between them. Old school stuff. Elegant." Olivia stared at the engine, then back at him. "You rebuilt a 6-month project in 6 hours, with spare parts, alone." Jack shrugged. "Wasn't 6 months of work. It was 6 months of wrong thinking." She didn't speak for a long moment. Then she laughed, not out of humor, but out of sheer disbelief. She looked at him like he was an alien who had just landed in her lab. "You actually did it," she whispered. Which means, said a voice from behind them. "You have a PR nightmare." It was Jordan Kim, head of communications, holding a phone. "You need to see this," he said. He showed her a breaking news alert. Nova Drive's janitor claims to fix hybrid disaster. CEO promises to marry him if he succeeds. Someone leaked it. Olivia froze. "They think it's a joke," Jordan said. "A meme. But now that it worked, it's spreading like wildfire." Olivia's fingers tightened around the edge of the control table. There were already thousands of tweets, polls, hashtags, memes. From mop to marriage. Bennett's bet. It was viral. If she backed out now, if she treated it like a joke, she'd be finished. It would look like she'd used Jack for a stunt. The board would crucify her, investors would flee. But if she followed through... Jack said nothing. Olivia turned to face him fully. Her voice was calm, controlled, but her eyes flickered with fire. "I don't back out of my promises." He raised an eyebrow. "Even ones made at 2 in the morning under emotional distress?" She tilted her head. "Especially those." The press would eat it up. A Cinderella story for the modern age. Jack Miller, disgraced genius turned janitor turned savior, and Olivia Bennett, America's coldest CEO with a sudden heart. She could spin this, but only if he played along. "We'll need to talk," she said. Jack just nodded. "Your call, Miss Bennett." She didn't smile, but she didn't walk away either, not yet. By Monday morning, the engagement was official. Nova Drive's corporate press room overflowed with reporters, cameras, and flashing lights. Olivia Bennett stood at the podium, calm and collected, a diamond ring catching the glare as if it had always belonged on her hand. "Yes," she said, her voice smooth, confident, controlled. "The rumors are true. Jack and I are engaged." The crowd erupted in questions. When did it start? Is this why he was given access to the lab? Who is Jack Miller, really? But Olivia raised a hand. "We'll have time for questions. For now, all I'll say is, he saved my company, and, in many ways, he saved me too." Off stage, Jack stood in a crisp gray suit, freshly tailored. He looked out of place, not because of the cameras or the crowd, but because he didn't wear his discomfort like a mask. He wore it honestly. It made him real and dangerously magnetic. The briefing ended, the room cleared, the ring came off. Inside Olivia's private office, the mood shifted. "Let's get something straight," she said, placing the ring gently on her desk. "I'm not a romantic. I don't believe in fairy tales. What I do believe in is damage control." Jack raised an eyebrow. "You sure picked a dramatic way to do it." "It's what the press expects now. So here's the deal. 6 months. Fake engagement. We attend events together, smile for the cameras, and give them the redemption arc they're all desperate to buy into. And in exchange, you become head of innovation." She tapped a folder on her desk, his contract, ready for signature. "Your past disappears. A full cleanup of your image, a return to the industry, and more access to tech than you've had in 5 years. Jack looked at her, then the contract, then back again. "You really know how to make a man feel special." She didn't flinch. "Do we have a deal?" He picked up the ring, turned it between his fingers. Then he nodded. "Yeah, we have a deal." The first month blurred into photo ops, board meetings, and careful choreography. Jack appeared beside Olivia at tech expos, sat in on panels, and answered reporters with crisp, humble deflections that made him look brilliant and grounded at once. Public opinion swung hard. The engagement story became a PR goldmine. Nova Drive's stock climbed. America's hottest power couple headlined across every tech blog and finance site. Behind the scenes, Jack took charge of the R&D floor like he'd never left the world of innovation. He challenged team leads, rewrote inefficient protocols, and introduced a modular battery system that slashed prototype costs in half. He belonged, and that made Olivia nervous. Late one night, after a long product review meeting, they found themselves alone in her office. She kicked off her heels and sank into the sofa, massaging the bridge of her nose. "You know, I've worked with some of the smartest people in this industry, but none of them ever had your gut instinct." Jack poured 2 glasses of water and handed her one. "Instinct's just data you haven't bothered to organize yet." She smirked. "You always talk like that?" "Only when I like the company." That hung in the air for a second too long. She cleared her throat. "Don't start thinking this is more than it is." "I don't," Jack said softly. "But you do." She looked up sharply, but his gaze wasn't smug. It was searching, honest. For once, Olivia didn't have a clever response. They started staying late in the lab. Not for the work, not really. It was the quiet, the calm between storms. Olivia found herself laughing more. Jack started teasing her, gently, never cruelly, and she didn't hate it. One night, he brought her takeout. Thai food, extra spicy, just how she liked it. "How did you know?" she asked. "I watched you eat 3 bites of pepper steak at that fundraiser and never flinch while the rest of the table died." "You noticed that?" "I notice everything about you." Her chopsticks paused midair. "Stop doing that," she said quietly. "Doing what?" Looking at me like this isn't fake. Jack set his food down. You say it's fake. But what if it doesn't feel fake anymore? She stood too quickly, her chair scraping back. This isn't a fairy tale, Jack. You were a janitor 2 months ago. His jaw tightened, but he didn't snap. You're right. And you were a CEO pretending not to be scared of failure. That landed like a slap. They stared at each other, something unspoken simmering in the silence, until she turned away. Good night, Jack. But something had shifted. By week 8, she was instinctively checking the clock to see when he'd walk into a meeting. He caught himself looking for excuses to stop by her office. Their public appearances became effortless. Their smiles started reaching their eyes, until the outside world reminded them why they were faking it. A week later, the Detroit Daily published a cover story, Jack Miller, the man behind the ring and the scandal. The article dredged up the past. Photos from his F1 days, rumors of the embezzlement scandal, interviews with former rivals who called him a master manipulator with a charming grin. Olivia's team scrambled. It's gaining traction, Jordan said, and the board wants a meeting. She walked straight to the R&D wing, stormed past engineers, and found Jack soldering a sensor plate. He looked up before she spoke. I know. They're coming for you. They've always been coming for me. She tossed the article on the table. Do you want me to handle this? He met her gaze. No, I want you to believe me. Olivia's voice dropped. Did you do it? Jack stared at her. No, he said. I was framed. The money trail was real, but the transfers were forged. I tried to prove it. No one listened, so I walked away. Her breath hitched. He leaned closer. I've never lied to you, Olivia. Not even when you asked me to. She felt the truth in his voice, raw, painful, unvarnished. I'm not perfect, he added, but I never stopped caring about the machines or the people. She looked at him like she was seeing something she wasn't ready to name. Later that night, she wrote a personal statement for the press. I believe in second chances. Jack Miller earned his, and I stand by him, not just as a partner, but as a woman who knows what it means to be underestimated. The story flipped again, but something inside her had changed for real. And she knew, if this ended in disaster, it wouldn't be because of the scandal. It would be because she let herself fall for him. 6 months later, Olivia Bennett didn't recognize the woman in the mirror. Not because she looked different, though she did. Her expression was softer, her shoulders less tight, her eyes less guarded. It was because she felt different. She'd built a legacy by staying in control, by being sharper, faster, colder than anyone in the room. But lately, she wasn't always the sharpest or the fastest, and she wasn't cold anymore. Not around him. Jack Miller was still technically her fiancé. The ring had returned to her finger in week 3 of their arrangement, this time without a contract. They never sat down to redefine the rules. The boundaries simply dissolved. Sometime between shared coffee runs and late-night debugging sessions, between awkward first interviews and accidental hand-holding that neither pulled away from pretending stopped. But neither of them said it out loud. Not yet. Nova Drive had never performed better. Jack's streamlined innovation pipeline slashed development costs by 30%. Olivia's new leadership model, transparent, collaborative, adaptable, turned board skeptics into believers. They'd launched a second hybrid model. The government renewed the $500 million contract, and the company's value hit an all-time high. Power Couple didn't even begin to cover it. To the outside world, they were a modern myth. The CEO and the janitor who'd changed the world together. But myths invite scrutiny. And when you're on top, someone always wants to drag you down. It came on a Monday. Olivia was in a product strategy session when Jordan rushed in, pale and breathless. He handed her a tablet. The headline made her stomach drop. F1 scandal, hidden evidence ties Jack Miller to missing funds? A new expose, slick, well-produced, filled with anonymous sources and newly discovered documents. The timing wasn't coincidence. Nova Drive was days away from signing a multinational expansion deal. Someone wanted blood. The room fell silent. "What do we do?" Mason asked. Everyone looked to Olivia. She stood slowly. Every instinct screamed, play it safe. Suspend him. Distance the brand. Issue a neutral statement. Instead, she opened the press conference app and stepped to the mic herself. "I've read the article," she began, voice steady, "and I'm here to tell you it's a desperate attempt to weaponize lies we've already buried." Flashbulbs erupted. Reporters leaned forward. "I've reviewed every record," she continued. "And more importantly, I know Jack Miller. I trust him, not as a business partner, not as a face for this company, but as the man who helped rebuild it from the inside out. We don't abandon our people here, and I won't abandon him now." The room exploded. Jack watched it all from the hallway. She hadn't consulted him, hadn't asked for his input. She just stood up and burned her political capital to the ground to shield him. By the time she stepped backstage, the board was already blowing up her phone. "Are you trying to sink this company?" Mason hissed. "No," she said calmly. "I'm trying to show them what real leadership looks like." She turned and nearly collided with Jack. His eyes searched hers. "Why did you do that?" "Because I'm not pretending anymore." He stepped forward, voice low. "Neither am I." Before she could respond, he pulled something from his pocket. A ring. Not the original one. A new one, simpler. Warmer. Real. Olivia's breath caught. "You made a bet," Jack said. "And it changed both our lives. But this time, no bets, no contracts. Just one question." He dropped to one knee, right there in the hallway outside the press room, still in view of at least 2 shocked interns. "Will you marry me? For real this time?" For the first time in her life, Olivia didn't think. She didn't strategize. She just said what she felt. "Yes." They were married 2 months later in a quiet ceremony. No press, no spectacle, just family, a few close friends, and a warehouse-turned-garden that Jack had designed himself. She wore no veil. He wore no tie. But when he kissed her, the world felt reborn. Afterward, they signed the Nova Drive expansion deal side by side, both as CEOs. And 1 month later, Olivia walked into the lab, placed his hand on her stomach, and whispered, "We're building something new again." Jack just laughed, then kissed her forehead. The world kept watching, but they no longer cared about headlines, because the real story, the one that mattered, was theirs. A reckless bet, a broken genius, a woman who dared to lose control, and the life they built when the line between fake and forever disappeared.